Today, we're going to talk about MLB The Show 25's franchise feature premiere that was last night, where it was a 2-hour live stream on YouTube and Twitch where they talked about the new stuff that was coming to franchise for this year's game. With that being said, I'm going to condense it all into a shorter video for you to hear about what is coming to this year's franchise and give you my feedback. Did I like it? Did I dislike it? My thoughts, my concerns, all that good stuff. And also, I got a little inside information from SDS themselves where they talked about progression and regression, but you can thank Mills for getting this answer from them, and then they told us that we could share it all with you. So Mills' information will be in the comment section down below. Go and give him a follow on Twitter, Twitch, all that good stuff. And I also know that Scan has this info, so he'll be talking about it too. Go check him out in the link below. But with that being said, let's talk about this new front office experience that MLB The Show is implementing in this year's franchise. Essentially, free agency was the big focus for this year's game, and to be honest, I'm actually pretty happy about the changes that they talked about. Kind of like what they did with the scouting and drafting a few years back, free agency was the main focus, and they also improved a couple things as well. You're probably going to hear this every year moving forward, but there were some logic improvements with contracts, trades, free agency, drafting and scouting, and just in general, the AI logic was improved. At least that's what they said. To be honest, logic is probably going to be tweaked every single year just because of real life baseball. There's crazy things that happen every single year, so MLB The Show tries to reflect that in the game. So yeah, it may be boring and repetitive to hear that logic has been improved every single year, but I feel like it is something that needs to be tweaked every single year. And then the other thing that they talked about was they tweaked the drafting and scouting a little bit, where relievers and closers aren't as important. So hopefully they won't be drafted as soon as usual from previous years. So we'll see what those tweaks look like, but logic and the drafting and scouting were two things that they talked about a little bit, but let's focus mainly on this free agent stuff. Alrighty, so if you see me look over here to this side, it's because I have the live stream pulled up just to make sure that I give you all the information correctly. So it's essentially my little cheat sheet right here. But for the free agent experience, there's going to be essentially two systems for free agency, or two ways that you're going to handle free agency. There's their new big board system, where this big board only applies to the top 150 free agents. So as you can see on the screen with the L1, R1 like tabs or whatever, you can see top 150 free agents. That's their new system. Outside of the top 150 free agents, you will use the normal free agent contracts and everything like that we're used to from like MLB The Show 24, 23 in previous years. But for the top 150 free agents, this is the new big board system. So let's go talk about that. So this big board system is essentially really similar to what they did in March to October a few years back, where you have 3 priority free agents along with positional needs and team needs that you can see at the top of the screen. So as you see next to the player picture, it says motivation to sign. So let's talk about the first thing, which is free agent motivation, or free agent signing motivation, as they called it. That percentage is essentially the motivation that free agent has to sign with your team, essentially the interest in your team. As you can see, the contract offer has to hit, or their interest has to hit at least 50% for you to offer a contract, similar to the whole scouting system and drafting system. But you can see their name, their demand, their potential, their overall rumored teams that they could potentially be talking to. There is some fog of war involved in this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Their free agent rank, which is not just their overall in the game, there's some other factors involved. The motivation boost per week, and then there's also a couple other motivational factors as well. One of the first motivational factors is positional needs. So essentially what you can do is select up to 3 positions that you're gonna, essentially what 3 positions you need the most to target in free agency. And of course, if one of your free agent big board players fits one of those positional needs, you get a little bit of bonus or a little bit of a motivation boost per week, as you can see on the right side of this screen. So positional needs can actually help you in free agency. Again, really similar to like when you're scouting and it says like what positional needs are you scouting for, and it gives a boost every single week. It's the same thing for free agency here. And like I said, for this new system, it is only the top 150 free agents. You can only target 3 at a time, and you're not locked into these 3. You can remove a player or add a player from the board at any time. Just know that if you remove a player, you may lose some motivation for that player. And there's a couple other factors that may lose motivation for players, but you're not locked into these 3 targets the entire offseason. It's a 16-week offseason where you can add players and remove players from your big board whenever you want. But just know that if you want to offer them a contract and stuff, you will have to get their motivation as high as possible to get the best chance of signing them. So now going back to those things that may boost motivation, team needs is another one. And I actually think this is a really good addition here. Where are you looking for a left-handed batter, a right-handed batter, a specific type of pitcher, defense, speed, all this stuff? Something that's a little bit new. I know it may not be the craziest new addition, but you know what? I kind of like it. Again, it helps you sign free agents. And at the same time, it kind of helps pick out what type of players you're looking for, and it kind of helps target some players that maybe you wouldn't have known about or thought about signing before. And I don't think they showed this in the stream. At least I wasn't able to find it, but apparently there is a recommended tab. So I don't know if that's going to be under the L2R2 or the L1R1. I know it was talked about that there is a recommended tab, but I don't know if they showed it. So if maybe it was something that I misunderstood, but I would assume a recommended tab would have to do with the positional needs or the team needs that you set. And that way they would kind of target the free agents based on that fit those needs. So I'm assuming that's what that is. But again, I couldn't find an example in the stream. So I'm hoping that's what it is. I'm not leading you astray on that. But they did talk about a recommended tab. So we'll see how that comes into play. But if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. I put my hands up. I messed that up. But I could have swore that was something that was mentioned. Other factors that may affect their interest in signing with you, or their motivation, I should say, to sign with you, is the team quality. So there's a contender there, and then also player competition. If a player is blocked by someone like an Aaron Judge, they may not want to sign with you as much because they know they're not going to get the playing time that they're looking for. So that may actually lower the motivation. So there's a couple different factors that play into their interest in signing with you, their motivation to sign with you. So you kind of need to play it smart. How high can you get that motivation, and how likely are you to sign that free agent? Part of the AI improvement or the AI logic that they talked about was that the AI will have a similar priority system to you where they're targeting specific free agents for their team. They did talk about the whole like position hogging where the AI was signing a bunch of shortstops or first basemen. They did say they worked on that where it isn't going to happen as often. So we'll have to keep a lookout for when the game releases to see if that's true or not. So it's a good thing to hear that, where position hogging won't happen as often, because that is definitely something that is a problem. I don't need to see Freddie Freeman, Nathaniel Lowe, Matt Olson, Rowdy Tellez, Daniel Vogelbach, and every first baseman on the same team. It was just getting out of hand. But it is cool to see this like motivation system implemented in the game. So it kind of gives you like a chance of signing a player or not signing a player. It's kind of a little bit of a gamble, but hey, I kind of like it. A little bit more of a challenge. All right, the next big thing they talked about was the now or never. Obviously, I don't want to break this like every single feature down to like the finest of fine print. Essentially, like I'm giving you all the details. I'm trying to give you just a quick version because I don't want this video to be too long. So now or never, as you can see for this example, it was Josh Naylor. It is on their big board. And do you want to offer them a contract or do you want to pass on them? Because they currently are close to signing with one of these teams. Essentially, last chance to offer this guy a contract to try to sign with them. As you can see, their free agent rank, their potential, their overall, the matches your needs, the motivation to sign, and then you have the rumored teams that they're close to signing with, along with a mystery team in the question. And then in the top right, you can see 5% motivation decrease because another organization made the first competitive offer for this free agent. So we'll talk about that in a bit, but there are some free agents that actually want the contract for, like, they want to be wanted. They want that contract immediately in free agency. There's also some players that will sit and wait and wait and wait to see how free agency plays out, which I think is kind of cool. It's kind of how real life is. Some players want to get their free agency, like their offseason, done immediately, and some players want to see what kind of contract offers they can get. So some players will have different motivations to sign. Like I said, there's different things that can help you increase that motivation and decrease that motivation. We just really are going to have to deep dive into the offseason and see how it plays out and kind of see which players like what. So it's one of those things I feel like we're going to have to get our hands on to really see how it plays. So going back to this motivation thing, some players may lose motivation if you wait to offer them a contract, or some players may want to sign immediately, and some players may want to set the market. So some teams may not sign specific players because they're waiting to see what one of the big names goes for, kind of like how Ohtani played out and Juan Soto played out, where you kind of had to wait. And then once that big name signed, then the dominoes started to fall with some of those other free agents. So it kind of seems like there's a lot of under the hood stuff that that SDS worked on that we're just gonna, like I said, we just got to get our hands on to see how it really plays out. And just to show you kind of how it plays out, there'll be like a little like cut scene where like a phone pops up and it says contract decision. And then it says he's signing with the Reds, no hard feeling, but their offer was too good to pass up. So there you are. That's kind of how it plays out. I just didn't show you the cutscene because I don't really know if there's going to be like a copyright or anything like that. So I'm just showing you screenshots to kind of avoid any situation like that. I don't think SDS would copyright strike me, but you never know. Sometimes it's just like an auto system. Let's quickly talk about this fog of war rumor system. So as you can see, the rumored to be talking to, the verifying 33% means that the 33% could be correct, that those teams are the correct teams that they're talking to. The verified means that those are the teams that they're talking to. And then at the same time, you've got the question mark, which is like a mystery team that's involved. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Like, will you act faster to offer a contract because you know that like the Dodgers are interested in Kyle Tucker and the Dodgers are going to throw money at Kyle Tucker? So I want to try to get that motivation as high as possible so I can offer him a contract and I can sign that free agent. So I think it's one of those things where it's cool because you know that they're talking to teams and you know that maybe a certain team's going to act a little bit quicker. So I think it's one of those things where it just adds a little bit of pressure. It just adds a little bit of a wrench into free agency. I kind of like it. The next thing was called a rival opportunity. Essentially, it's a rival within your division is rumored to be signing a specific player. Do you want to poach them? Which, you know what? It's something that's a little bit petty, but I think it's kind of cool. Hey, I don't want my divisional rival to sign a good player. Let me make sure I add them to my team instead. You know what? Yeah, I kind of like it. I don't know if this is going to happen every single time a divisional rival is signing a big name, but if this is something that pops up every once in a while, I think that's a cool little fresh thing to add. Something simple, but you know what? I like it. They talked about big market logic. So essentially, it's the big market teams have the upper hand on the smaller market teams, which is kind of how it is in real life anyways. I don't know how strong the big market logic is going to be. I hope it's not something that's just like super overpowered, but it was a new logic added to the game. It was a motivation boost for free agents, and then on top of that, it was just one of those things to try to avoid, you know, the Juan Soto to the A's or Ohtani to the Pirates, that type of thing, where it's just those almost too unrealistic signings were happening, where they wanted to try to tweak that and fix that. So it was a new logic added where big market teams have a little bit of a boost in free agency. Offer rejection was the next thing, which I think this is actually a big thing. And by big thing, I mean, it was definitely something that was needed. So an offer rejection penalty is essentially if you lowball a player or if they just don't like your contract offers. So one of the outcomes here is my phone must be malfunctioning. It's showing your offer as a joke. Meanwhile, my motivation is dropping. So if you lowball a player, they are going to lose motivation to sign with you. If you take a player off the big board, they lose motivation to sign with you. So there are going to be different things you got to take into consideration when offering contracts or removing players from your big board. So just know there are some penalties for certain actions in free agency now. They talked about player logic improvements. They didn't really show any specific things on screen, but let me just list some of the things that they talked about. They talked about contract and arbitration numbers looking to mimic more real life contracts. So that's actually an improvement. The contract lengths and demands and actual like signing numbers will improve and change throughout the years to kind of mimic how real life is, where it's kind of going up as we move through the years. Essentially what they were looking to do is try to create more real life or mimic real life terms that are happening in contracts in real life baseball. Trade logic was also improved, and we'll talk about one of the new factors that is helping that trade logic, but they did talk about improving trade logic, and there still is only 3 slots for trades. So there's that. One of those new things for the trade logic was defensive war updates. And if you guys watch my rebuilds, you know that I don't care about defense, but now I'm gonna have to. Defense now affects a player's value or trade value. So I'm going to have to take that into consideration. But essentially they noticed that defense really had no effect in a player's value whatsoever. So now they're implementing defensive war updates and making sure that defense actually does play effect into a player's value. They talked about qualifying offers, which they noticed that they weren't the right qualifying offer they didn't implement qualifying offers correctly in previous games. So now the qualifying offer will update for the top 150 player salaries in the game. So the qualifying offer will change year to year when you're playing franchise. The next thing they talked about was the depth chart. It was a really small tweak, but I actually like it. During the offseason, it will show every player in that position and not just the MLB level position. So if you're looking at first base, you can actually scroll down each position. So you can only see 3 now, but if you keep kind of scrolling down, it'll show you the other first baseman that you have within the organization. That is during the off season. During the season, you will only see the MLB ready players. And then of course, if you move down with R1, it'll adjust the depth chart as well. But you can kind of see every player for that position in your organization. A small change, but I like it. There's a new screen for the 40-man. So select 40-man and you'll head over to this where you can see if they're on the 40-man and if they're Rule 5 eligible. This is so helpful. You don't have to scroll on the menu for the 40-man or in your roster screen anymore, because normally you just had to keep scrolling to the right to see if they were 40-man or Rule 5 eligible. But now it's all right here. You can sort by overall potential 40-man, if they're on the 40-man or not, or if they're Rule 5 eligible. It's a small change. It's a small quality of life change, but this was needed. Speaking of contracts, there were some people that noticed in the live stream that this was the only kind of contract offer for this new big board system, where it looks like it's pretty straightforward: years, salary, send the contract. So no club options, no backloading or front loading on this new system. So we'll have to see if that's something that they're going to change or try to tweak for the future, because previous years we had the front loaded and then the club option player options, which I love a good club option. So we're gonna have to see how that plays out. But I like that you can see your available budget to spend and then how much your budget would be after, which apparently is also been fixed, which is a huge change. But losing those player options is a little bit of a upsetting thing. I kind of would have liked to see that implemented immediately into this new system. If that is the case, that they don't have those options there, bummer. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. I would like to have the options in game, so losing those would suck. I'll be honest, that would suck to lose the club options backloaded and all that stuff. One other small thing that they added was you can see when a player was drafted now, or if they weren't drafted in the player card. There's also going to be a new thing on the player card as well. Let me talk about that really quick. You can see recent games. So you can see how they performed in recent games throughout your franchise save, which I think is a really cool addition. So there's that. But now let's talk about the big thing, progression and regression, because I know that's really what you guys want to know about. And I figured I would put this in its own section and not just kind of jump it right in the middle of the feature premiere stuff, because then you guys might miss it. This way we have 2 different sections of the video. So from SDS themselves, it doesn't sound like there is a major change to progression and regression in this year's game, but this message does give us a little bit more clarity in how that system works. A little bit more of a clarification message from them, so we're not so in the dark when it comes to this. Obviously I'm not looking for the whole formula or the code on how a player lives up to the potential or doesn't live up to the potential. 1, because I don't understand code, and 2, that would just kind of take away from the whole fun of it. I don't need to know some cheat code or some hack to make sure that my player lives up to potential every single time, but at least they're giving us a message where we at least have some sort of idea how it works. So from SDS themselves, I'll show you the message on screen now. It says there is not a 10-year mark. We've always kind of talked about as a community that 10-year service mark where a player regresses. It seems like from them, that's not the case. There's a range of prime, in parentheses, ages, and a die roll determines the trajectory. Some players fall quicker than others. Performance has an impact, but after the age of 31, father time, it does start to creep in. So during the prime ages of a player, a die roll determines the trajectory for the rest of his career. Interesting. Performance does have an impact on the player, which is also interesting. So performance does play a part, but there does seem to be some sort of mark for a player where regression does kick in, and that is the age of 31. I don't know how strong that regression is, but it does seem like there is some sort of wall or cutoff where a player will start to see natural regression, which it does need to be implemented, right? A player shouldn't just continue to grow until they're 50 years old in terms of overall and potential, right? There does have to be a point where, like they said, father time does start to creep in. Based on research, they think that's the 31-year-old mark. I don't really know. I'm not the one that does research on when players start to fall off, but 31 seems to be their age. Then they finish it off with, we also made an adjustment to potentials. In the past, the system took all 30-year-old players and adjusted the potential to match the overall. That's what OVL is. They changed that so the potential stays at what they're designed to have, and then that potential slows regression. So in the past for MLB The Show, it looks like potential would just automatically set to what the overall was once a player hit 30 years old. But now the higher the potential is, it seems like that's one thing that affects the regression of a player. So once a player hits 30, if they have a high potential, it would slow down regression. At least that's how I'm reading it. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Overall, like I said, it doesn't really seem like there was a huge change in progression or regression in the game. Essentially, this was just more of a clarification, but at least it gives me a little bit of insight so I can kind of understand it. It does still seem like it is a little bit random, which in real life, it kind of is. Some players live up to the hype, some don't. We'll have a random player pop off, which the die roll determining that trajectory kind of adds that randomness to the game. So like, again, it's not giving us the exact like equation or code that they're using to figure out how a player lives up to potential, progresses or regresses, but more so just giving us a little bit more clarity on it, which I'm cool with. Like, we've been kind of in the dark about the whole system for a few years now, and now we get a little bit more of an idea of how it works, and that there is a little bit of a father time aspect into the game. At the age of 31, a player will naturally regress a little bit. So I don't know, let me know what you guys think about the message. Does it help you? Does it make you a little bit more confused? Does it make things worse? As a whole, I actually like that SDS came out and kind of gave us that information to share with you guys, so it is a positive. So to sum it all up, I think a lot of the changes that were made this year, it sounds like there's a lot of logic improvements, a lot of quality of life changes, a lot of under the hood stuff that we're not necessarily going to call them features or like new additions, but a lot of things that needed to be fixed for franchise. Like, franchise has had a lot of small things within the mode that have been problematic, and it seemed like that's what they focused on this year. Obviously, they're retooling the big board that they've used in previous aspects of the game, like March to October and also the drafting and scouting. Now they're using it for free agency. I think free agency was definitely an area that needed to be improved, and it looks like from what they're showing us, it looks like it's going to be improved for sure. And from having conversations with SDS, they do take our feedback. They do try to implement as many things as possible. Like, I would love to see online franchise come back. I would love to see a revitalized, revamped, overhauled trade system. So I definitely am pushing them and expecting to see them make more changes to franchise mode in the future, not feature, future. So I'm definitely still critical of SDS, but at the same time, I am willing to give them props. And from what I've seen so far, franchise looks to be moving forward. Again, they only get 1 year to work on the game, so it is one of those things where they do have a small amount of time to implement as many things as possible without breaking the game. So I do take that into consideration. Obviously, I do wish they could do more, so we'll have to see how they continue to improve the game moving forward. But from what they've shown us this year, what they've told us about progression and regression, I think it's a step in the right direction. Overall, I like the changes. We'll see how it actually is implemented once the game comes out. Are there going to be a bunch of bugs? Is it going to be broken? We'll have to wait and see. But from what I'm seeing, I like it. Let me know what you guys think down below, and we'll go from there. I'll be responding to a couple of your comments. Again, check the pinned comment down below. Check out Mills and Scan, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.